Hello and welcome to episode 106 of the Alfa Romeo Driver Podcast, brought to you by the Alfa Romeo Owners Club. I'm Kirsty Hodson, and to celebrate International Women's Day, I'm delighted to be joined by Krystyna Perry, Head of PR at Alfa Romeo UK, and Kirsten Adams-Ford, President of Alfa Romeo Owners Club of New Zealand. Welcome both, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Cool. I'd like to start with some questions for Krystyna, if I may.
Of course.
So what does the role of Head of PR entail?
That is a very good question. The job is all about creating or getting people to talk about Alfa Romeo in a positive way. So it's working very much with our marketing team to complement their activities. So we work with media, we work with influencers to hopefully say nice things about our products, or sometimes to minimize some of the more negative aspects if they should ever pop up. But, you know, few and far between on this brand on that one, luckily.
I believe that.
The reality, however, means that I get involved in everything across the brand, which is what makes it such an amazing job. I work really closely with our incredible brand team and our marketing department to really try and make sure that everything that we do is sort of consistent across every touch point for our customers, for our retailers, for our media. We want to make sure those messages are going through everything. We want to get those really positive news stories out there as soon as we can and make sure that they're hitting every single person who really needs to know about it, whether that's a customer who doesn't yet need to know or doesn't yet know they need to buy an Alfa Romeo, or whether it's the retailer who needs to make sure that they're fully up to date with the latest information so that when those people come through their doors, they can tell them everything amazing about it. But it's not just with new cars, with Alfa Romeo, with the amazing history that we've got with the brand. I'm lucky enough to be able to work on stories around the heritage, the history, motorsports. I've been lucky enough to be involved in all these different aspects of the brand. So while technically it's very much in a nice little box, the reality is that we're a small brand and we make sure that we get involved in everything and keep everything all nice and consistent and make sure that Alfa Romeo runs through everything that we're doing.
Nice. Every day's different then, by the sounds of it.
Absolutely. It's the joy of the job is you wake up in the morning with your to-do list and you end it with a very different to-do list, often with a lot of the same things on from the morning, just with quite a lot of other things added on top.
So what is the weirdest interaction you've ever had with someone in your job?
I mean, that is a tough one to find the weirdest thing that we've ever done. I mean, I've had the joys of we've done product. I mean, actually, possibly the weirdest thing I've done was very recently appearing on The Apprentice, representing Alfa Romeo. We were very, I don't know if the word lucky is the right one, but we were certainly pitched to by the team one of their madcap ideas, and to say it was an experience is an understatement. Hats off to everyone who works in television, because that is a very different beast. And the crazy ideas that they come up with on The Apprentice as well, that takes a special kind of person.
What sort of thing were they pitching to you?
They pitched to us a virtual pop star called Bammy, who ended up being maybe a little bit more middle-aged woman than they planned out being, which technically that's absolutely brilliant, because being right alongside there, I feel we need a little bit more representation in the world in the world generally, but in the world of virtual pop stars, which I can't say I know a huge amount about. We did actually end up making a deal. My wonderful colleague, Martin, who works with me in marketing side of things, he made them a deal for a 5-year contract, but luckily we popped in a 1-year break clause within that. So if things didn't work out and the changes that we wanted weren't made, we could nicely get out of that partnership. But it's a very surreal experience.
Sounds fun though. Well done.
It was fun actually, and it's completely different from what we normally do in the office on the day-to-day. So it made a nice change. And Baroness Brady is incredible in real life. She is one of my heroes.
So what originally attracted you to a career in the car industry?
Wow. It all started out very innocently. I actually did my placement year at university at the Kia Motors press office. I saw the job spec, thought, oh, that sounds quite interesting. Applied, having known absolutely nothing about cars other than how to fill up my washer fluid and that I enjoyed driving. Didn't really know anything beyond that. But the job sounded really interesting. And I was actually really lucky that I got offered 2 different roles, one working for an airline and one in the car industry. And I just thought, well, actually, the car industry just sounds much more fun. So I very much went with a gut feeling and thought, how do I want to spend a year of my life? Well, actually, cars sound like a really good way to do that. Came in and completely fell in love with the automotive industry. The technology, the rates of change, the fact that everyone has an opinion on cars, whether you like the design, how they drive, whether you, even if you don't drive, what it's like as a passenger, everyone has an opinion on what they like and don't like about cars. And that I found really intoxicating and just absolutely got hooked on it. So then didn't want to go back to university. And actually, before I accepted like my final year and signed for my house in my final year, I actually applied for a job at Alfa Romeo in the press office.
Oh, wow.
I was lucky enough to get an interview for it, but unfortunately, I also had to make a decision to sign for my final year house with my classmates. So it was the decision of, do I go for an interview and risk not getting a job, which I clearly wasn't qualified for, or do I go back and finish my degree at university and then tackle it in a year's time? Common sense prevailed and I turned the interview down, and it was one of those that was always one that got away. Quite a few years later, though, I got contacted by a recruiter who was looking at filling a job at Alfa Romeo, and it was one of those brands that I always thought, right, that's the one that I needed to go back for. It was the one that got away. And in the meantime, obviously, having years of experience in automotive, completely falling in love with everything there is with Alfa, I had to go for it. I was very happy in my previous job and thought, well, what's the chances that I might end up getting it? So I'll apply anyway. Strangely, they then offered me the job, and well, the rest is really history on that front. But it was always the dream.
That's wonderful. Okay, thank you. I've got a question for Kirsten, actually. So how long have you been a member of AROC New Zealand, and when did you become president of the club?
Oh, yeah. So we're just newbies in the scheme of things compared to a lot of people in the club, actually. So that's why I feel like it's like, wow, We've been with the club about 15 years. So 14, 2011. Yeah. Our first foray with the club was very memorable. Our first night, and I put in my recent article, I thought joining a car club was like well above our station in life. It was something that, was like, is this us? And we went to the restaurant, welcomed with open arms, lovely group of people that were there. And the next day, that restaurant was no longer in existence, because the next day was the February the 22nd, 2011, which was our second big earthquake here in Christchurch, and the most destructive one. So, yeah, it was, I kind of remember the first night for obvious reasons. Yes. And, yeah, I've been president since last October. So that was at our 50th anniversary of the club. And so that was in Wellington. And our 50th AGM is Festa Annuale is coming up in October in Auckland.
Wow. Are you the first female president of the club?
No. Fortunately, I've had someone whose footsteps I can sort of, aspire to. No. So that was Sharon. Sharon is, she's from Auckland, and she did an incredible job. So she was the first, and just totally full of admiration for everything that she did throughout her tenure. And we each get to do different things. It's been interesting to observe the different presidents and different things that come out of the various tenures. So, yeah, she had her own take on it. We all have our own take on what we're going to do. So, yeah.
So what are your responsibilities as president?
That's a really good question. There's not really a job, a role description that comes with it. As the president, obviously you're the go-to from, all the different regions. There is quite a strong presence, but mostly in the North Island for motorsport. So Motorsport New Zealand, we do have a representative in the club who manages all of the legals, because obviously there's a lot in that area. So Chris Brown's our man there. And, but then if there's anything to come back to be, discussed or ratified, that type of thing. There's a few things going on at the moment with the changes in Motorsport New Zealand. So we've needed to sort of manage that as it's gone through. There's also another organisation. It's basically Car Clubs of New Zealand. So we have only recently joined, but they've done a massive survey about cars, particularly sort of classic type cars in New Zealand, and basically the dollars that go through it, and it's in the multi-millions per annum that people spend on their cars, on the upkeep, on keeping them on the road, and it's become basically a voice.
So what sort of events do you do?
The different regions, so we are very regional. So New Zealand's kind of strung out sort of country, obviously. So we have, regional reps in most of the areas, from probably Auckland through to probably Dunedin's the strongest. There is a wee group down in Invercargill, and Auckland have just done one, which is the Ellerslie Concours, which is all marque, and all the different marques were there, and you take along probably your best Alfa to that one, and right through to, we had a picnic run last weekend where our local group, there was probably 25 people, did a wee tiki tour just up to a local, actually club members who own a vineyard about an hour and a quarter away from Christchurch, and we had a lovely afternoon out in the sun and doing some wine tastings, and of course a few bottles were purchased and thrown in the backs of the cars on the way back. So we've got coming up, which I've been involved in organising as well, just sort of helping to coordinate. There's a race meeting down at Teretonga in Invercargill coming up in April. It's called the George Begg Festival, and it's loosely modelled on the Goodwood Festival. So they've got a theme this year. The evening theme for the big event is Queen, a Night at the Opera. So that's got a sort of a 60s theme. But I've been involved with the organisers down there to coordinate an Alfa Romeo approach, because this year they have themed it Italian as an overall theme. So we've probably got close to 60 club members from throughout the country. So there are people coming from the North Island, and so we've basically got a big contingent going down. They're organising space for us to put all the cars in one area, so it'll be a lot of fun.
That's lovely. Cool. So do you have a lot of women in the club? How do you sort of encourage women into the Alfa Romeo Club New Zealand?
Yeah, that is a really good question. As an exercise, I sort of got the highlighter out in our membership book, which we, have got everyone listed, and pretty much on, you could count on two hands the individual members. So individuals as of themselves is, probably, 10 or so. But there's a lot of family memberships. So, there's over 660 members on the club. And, I'd say a good, decent half of them, if not more, would be couple families. So so the representation at any of our events is pretty mixed. So, a fair kind of mix of both. But yeah, not a lot of individual members. So that was a really good question to sort of investigate. So yeah, how do you bring them in? That's a great question. I probably should throw that one back at you.
Absolutely. I mean, we have kind of a similar setup. We have sort of joint memberships, and we have a lot of couples in AROC UK as well as individual women members. So as to how we do that, we have a section called Alfa Female in the UK, and that's just, it's not to separate women. It's to give women an extra space where they feel safe to talk about their cars, which is really cool. And sort of events we do, we've done, we've been to Silverstone Museum, we've done a bit of go-karting, try and go to car shows and things like that. And try and do things a little more kind of like girl-focused as well, we've done some pottery painting and things like that. So there's things you can do.
How many women do you have in your group?
So we've got nearly 300 Alfa Females now.
Wow.
Nice.
Wow.
We're going to do some more outings this year. But, as you said, we are spread out quite a lot. So getting together in person is more difficult. What we also do, though, is we produce magazines, and we also have like e-magazines and podcasts that we do as well. So do you have those kind of media items in New Zealand?
Yeah, the media presence is interesting because it is one that we've been discussing as a committee, just a small committee that we've sort of been working on. Probably more aimed, so my vice president in Auckland, Marque, he's looking as an approach really to bring in younger members, so the second generation, if you like, or actually I said maybe third and fourth, And so, his approach is on that side of it. We're probably a bit far-flung to sort of have enough, individual women brought together at an event. But it's probably a good idea at some point. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I'll chew that one over and, maybe. I sort of know that, like, here in Christchurch, a group has kind of morphed into a book club. So there's an, Alfa Romeo Women's Book Group once a month. So I know that one's there. I have been travelling too much for my work to be able to be consistent to, be able to attend. So, but interesting.
Geographical difficulties, like we have this, some of our registers are spread across the entire country.
Yeah. So we've got our Facebook page, AROC NZ. There are a couple of them. The main one that gets the most usage, there's one with a little black icon with a white car on it. That's really a forum for any Alfa Romeo owners. So where it's club members and non-club members. So we do manage to draw people in time where they might be going, oh, I didn't know about that event. And it's like, well, if you join the club, you will know. So, this is just a forum for everybody, which is fantastic because the knowledge that goes through that page is incredible. We also have Alfa News. It's just a web magazine and comes out every 2 months. And we all contribute throughout, anyone can contribute to it. And we're mostly like if we're regional rep, we would put in there what we've been doing recently, what runs we've had, whether it's, been a lunch run somewhere or an overnighter. So that's quite a good, and it's a really good, sit down and read magazine. So those are kind of sort of the main media presences. We're currently in the stage of rebuilding the website. So that's very exciting. It's just going to open us up to a whole lot more opportunities that we don't get with our current one. And the other really big piece of, and it's not really marketing, but it's been a book and which has been put together for the 50th anniversary, and I can hardly lift it up with one hand. So it's basically called Half Century Full Throttle, coffee table book, and it's the Alfa Romeo Owners Club of New Zealand, 1974 to 2024. So 50 years of the club. Amazing. And I haven't even had time to sit and flick through it. But it's pretty much, it lists every Alfa Romeo that's come into the country in that time, from way back. So you're one of our past presidents, Tom Brunel. He headed the team to put that together. And, that's going well as far as, members buying it. And it's a tome, if you like.
We reviewed that book in our December issue. Some questions for both of you. So, which car are you driving at the moment?
That's a bit of a choice at the moment. So I've got a daily driver, which is is just my 1.4 Giulietta, 6-speed manual. Love that wee car. It's it's just my go-to. So that's I really enjoy that. We've also got a 1975 GTV 2 litre, which is actually in the magazine. You might have, in that book, you might have seen it, the photograph of it. It's our pride and joy. We've called her Phoebe. So we named her after the guy we bought her off, named her after his wife, and the number plate finishes in BEE. So we thought Phoebe was quite sweet. And of course the colour, which is the Le Mans, or the Azuro blue, Le Mans blue, is very pretty, so, and quite unusual. She's of course our pride and joy. Love driving her. Just, too much fun to be legal, really. And she really is precious to us. And I mean, we're only caretakers, aren't we, of these cars. It's been a wee project of time, and we've done a few things with her. She had an interesting backstory in that she came off the plant in Italy in September 74, and she went to Frankfurt, so the Alfa Romeo dealership in Frankfurt, and then she went to Denmark and was in Denmark, I think, till about 92. Ended up in New Zealand in 92. We don't know what that story is. She was always right-hand drive, so it's not been converted. Yeah, fascinating. So it's just one of those little gaps that I haven't been able to find out what that story really is. And then we also have in the stable an 83 Alfa Sud.
Wow.
And she's Peanut. We name our classics. And a lot of fun to drive. I love driving her. Yeah, as well. So, but she's just in another garage, and it's a bit hard to get at the moment. So basically she's just tucked away until we get time to do a bit more work on her.
Was that your first Alfa? Any of these your first?
Well, not my first foray. So my first foray was way back when I was probably a mid-late teenager, and my father bought an Alfa Sud. And I think I would have driven it, so I would have had my license around, because I remember the pedals being really close together. So that was always a memory, and offset. So I always have that, and I have the feeling of, oh my God, this is fun, so that always stuck with me. And then he bought a 33, and I remember driving that as well. So way back with our first forays. And then we sort of stepped into, a few years ago, we started importing architectural hardware out of Italy, and I decided that I needed to have an Alfa Romeo. It had to be hand in hand. Toyota just didn't cut the mustard on that if I was visiting architects and things like that. So that's when I got the 147, which I loved as well. She was a cool wee car. And we have a lot of really good driving roads here, obviously in New Zealand, and particularly in Canterbury. We've got one road that everyone calls the Inland Road. It goes from Kaikoura and heads obviously inland. Nice, windy, twisty, throw it around. And I always, like, if I'm driving by myself, that is exactly what I would do. So I've had a Golf V5, I've had a BMW 318 M-Spec, and the 147. And the 147 was just top of the list all the time, with the BMW being a second and the Golf well out. So I do like to throw them around a wee bit.
No, that's quite a list. What about you, Krystyna?
Well, I'm incredibly jealous right now, if I'm completely honest. This is unfortunately, living in the joys of Berkshire, we don't have as much space for big garages with lots of cars in. And I would absolutely love to own a classic Alfa. Unfortunately, at the moment, I have a gap in my life for one. So that is something I really want to fill. And unfortunately, my husband is very much an enabler with these things, and would absolutely love for us to have one too. A few other priorities that we need to get over the line before we decide to invest in that one. But at the moment, I drive a Giulia. So I have a beautiful, very sleek, very sexy black Giulia Veloce, which just makes me smile every time I get behind the wheel. It was the first car I drove, not the Veloce to be fair, but the Giulia when I joined Alfa Romeo. And I remember getting in it for the first time and just going, my God, this feels like home. This is incredible. And similar to you, Kirsten, I come from BMW background as well. So I'd had BMWs for years and things. And it was all the best bits of that, but with a little something extra, a bit of soul that you just can't quite put your finger on why it feels so good and what's so special about it. But there was just this something, and it gave me this feeling. And I just knew this was it. This was the right thing. And I still feel that now every time I get in my car. You know, I have a joyous 2-hour drive to Coventry to go to the office when I go in. And yes, it's a boring journey up there. Definitely not roads like you've got in New Zealand. The M40 is very bland in comparison. However, I couldn't honestly think of a better car to do it in. I absolutely love it. And I've worked my way through the range. So I've had Stelvio, I've had Tonale. I'm yet to go into a Junior, but that's on the list. But there's something about Giulia that I keep coming back to, and it does make me smile. Although my first Alfa when I joined was actually a Giulietta, and I don't know what I was expecting with the Giulietta, but it was so much better than anything that I could have expected from a car of that size. I just didn't think you could have that sort of engagement from that kind of a car. And I absolutely loved her. She was fantastic. And again, used to having very hard riding cars that sort of you get out and your back's broken. I could not believe how comfortable she was, but without that trade-off of being all wallowy and everything else that you'd expect. So I found my happy place. I just need to expand into the classic realm and find my sort of, I say forever Alfa, but the one that I want to look after for longer than I normally am lucky enough to hold on to them.
You'll turn back and smile when you park the car?
Every time. I don't care where you are. You see an Alfa and they are just the most beautiful thing in anywhere. I remember seeing a 4C for the first time and going, my God, what is that? It just takes your breath away. It was such a stunning thing. And I actually saw an 8C in just driving down a road not far from me in Windsor. And I just remember seeing it and going, wow, that's a lovely looking 4C. And then I was like, that's not a 4C. And at this point in my life, I'd never seen an 8C in the flesh. It was a mythical car from magazines and all these things. But there's just something about an Alfa, even when you're not driving it, they just look like nothing else.
When we do a list of your favourite Alfa, the top two are always the original 33 Stradale and the modern 8C, always. So out of those two, which one would you put at the top?
Oh, I'd probably have to say the 33 Stradale. I've been lucky enough to spend quite a lot of time with that car over the last year or so, although still never driven it. I'm still working on that one. But I've learnt a lot of stories about it, and I've heard about how it came to be, and I've just spent a lot of time appreciating that no two of them that were built were actually the same. They were all hand done. The drawings themselves were done after the cars had been built. So there are things that mean that none of them match up. So there's just a little bit of a romance and something really special about that car. But maybe it's because the 8C almost for me is a bit more of a unicorn, because I've never really spent a lot of time with it. It still feels like that mythical thing, whereas strangely 33 feels a lot more real to me, which I know is a very strange and very privileged place to be. But that car is just very special.
We got up close to one, the new one, didn't we, at Goodwood?
We did indeed. The new one is surely going to be up there on that list going forward, though, because it is, again, just such a thing of beauty. And I love the fact that rather than going, let's recreate this and create a really retro throwback, they've gone, okay, if we kept making this car, what would it look like today? And it's all the small details that they put into it. So rather than having a chrome headlight surround, which would just look a little bit dated and retro, they've taken that and they've reinterpreted it with the 33 sort of LED almost eyelashes on it. So you get that halo effect still with the lights, but they've just done it in a really modern, clever way. But there's no doubt looking at it that that's an Alfa Romeo and that is the 33. And I just, I hope at some point I might be lucky enough to get behind the wheel of that one. Even if it's only at 5 miles an hour, I will take it.
What about you, Kirsten?
Wow, I'm sitting here being extremely envious now. It's like, wow, just to even see one. And it's the same here that, I mean, we'll never see a 33 in New Zealand, of course, I doubt. And the 8C, yeah, I mean, either of them I wouldn't complain even having a sit-in, but driving would be great. And actually in the last magazine, or one of the questions is, what would you like to drive and where? I did say the 8C, and I'd love to take it through the Lindis Pass, which is one of the mountain passes here. And then I said maybe the Mackenzie Basin for good measure, with the road closed, of course. So, but I've not seen an 8C in the flesh myself. They come online occasionally for the odd sale, and it's like, it's just beautiful. So yeah. I've been in the 4C. Friends of ours have got one, and Trevor, who's since passed away sadly, but he did take us for a quick sprint one day, and that was a lot of fun as well. So we produce, or Alfa Romeo just produces. I think again, it's harking back to what Christina said. It's the romance, it's the passion. That's what's our key, really, because and obviously an Alfa Romeo driver loves driving. So, I mean, it's just something that just you go, oh God, I'm so lucky, and to have to have Phoebe, so lucky. And every time we get her out, people just admire her. And the same with Peanut. I was driving her one day and pulled up some lights just locally here, and this guy was standing on the footpath, and he just stood there and he went, wow. And I know it wasn't me that he was looking at, so it was the car. But yeah, his eyes went like saucers, and you could tell, because you don't see them around that often, of course. So, but yeah, I love driving any of them, really.
Lovely.
Which would you choose?
What would I choose?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I have a thing for the 8C. It's a lovely car. It's beautiful to see. I've never seen an original 33 Stradale. So, yeah, the 8Cs I think is quite special. Thank you, ladies. That was awesome. Very much appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I feel very privileged to be asked to do this, and actually to be with you ladies as well, because you are flying the flag for Alfa, and it is incredible, and Alfa should be loved by women. But no, it's absolutely brilliant just to hear from you both and, see what's happening and how you're keeping it all alive within the clubs as well. So it is a real privilege for me to hear directly from you guys on these things as well. And I really, really want to come over to New Zealand right now, hearing you talk about the roads.
Oh, we'd love to have you. So anytime any of you or anyone you know is ever coming over, it's basically, open invite. I'm sure that, there's local members in different regions. If we said you're coming, they'd give you a car or,
That's it for this episode. We'll be back in 5 weeks' time on Sunday, the 6th of April. Episode 107 will be available to download from 1:30 p.m. from Podbean, Spotify, YouTube, the club's website, and everywhere else good podcasts are found. Until then, stay safe.